Hello everyone, it is the Comics Kid 2099, and I am here to show you a little bit more of my collection. I think at the rate I am going, in about 2 or 3 years I will have shown you everything. In a more serious note, I am going very slowly here, but that's just because I have a lot that I want to review, and I don't want to do a whole bunch of collection videos back to back like that. This shelf should go pretty quickly. Usually it takes me about 3 videos to cover an entire level of a bookcase. This has a whole lot of really thick books like you see in front of you and hardcovers that are also really big. I will get started. This first book that you see here is called Someplace Strange. It is written by Ann Nocenti and drawn by John Bolton. It's not really easy to explain. If I had to explain it, I would say this is like a modern day, very surreal Wizard of Oz type thing. You've got these 2 kids who go to a very strange land, someplace strange, and then weird stuff happens, and it's one of those, is this real, is it not real kind of stories. This is from the 80s. I don't remember exactly what year. And it's one of those original graphic novels, but you know, it's very thin compared to what we would call a graphic novel now. And this is back when Marvel had their Epic line, which was, I guess, a lighter, it was darker than your normal Marvel books, but it was, I guess, trying to be sort of like Vertigo at DC. I'm not entirely, this might have even predated Vertigo, but it was not quite as dark as what you would find at DC, and it eventually that line went under. It's no longer a thing. You know, real quick, I don't want to forget, I am going to show you guys these figures that I have. This is, when I was a kid, I had a figure like this. Basically, it's just a monstrous Spider-Man. It's really cool. At some point, we got rid of it. Several times growing up, we would take toys that we didn't think we really played with anymore, and we'd, give them to Goodwill or whatever. So, growing up, we got rid of the monster spider, or whatever it's called. I don't remember what it is. Eventually, I found it on eBay for about $10. It was awesome, because I had been looking on eBay, trying to restore bits of my childhood that we had gotten rid of, and then I was like, well, I kind of regret that. I kind of like that figure. I found it really cheap, too, because it had been going for like $30 on eBay, and I was like, I'm not paying that much money just to get a piece of my childhood that I no longer have. So, found it, it was cheap, and it's awesome, and this is it, I don't know, I don't read Spider-Man, so I don't know if this is actually from the comics. I want to say no. I know there is a comic book where he has 6 arms, and they are human arms. Like, he still looks like Spider-Man. If I had to guess, I would say maybe it's from the cartoon series, but I'm almost certain that it's not from the cartoon either. So that's really cool. I'm glad I found it, and I've kept it on my shelf, even though everything else on my shelf is like Superhero Squad-sized figures. I just thought, you know what, this needs to go here. And then I got a Spider-Man. This is, I got it for Christmas last year, I think. And because we have stockings for Christmas, and I couldn't really think of a lot of things to say, hey, you can get me this for the stocking. So I said, get me Superhero Squad stuff. And I got this, and another one that is over here, the Dr. Octopus. No? Okay, now I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure I got, wow, I can't remember. This Iron Man, a Doctor Doom, and a Dr. Octopus. 2 of them I got for Christmas. Maybe the Iron Man and the Dr. Octopus. I know the Dr. Octopus was one of them that I got for Christmas. And then I might have gotten the Spider-Man and the Dr. Doom at a Kmart somewhat recently, after Christmas. Or it might have been Spider-Man and Dr. Doom and Iron Man and, I don't know, Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus and then Iron Man and Dr. Doom. That was probably the pairing. You're hearing me babble about it. I don't know what to say. Those are the figurines that I have on this shelf. I know some of the other shelves have more figurines, but I don't have that many more Superhero Squad things. As I said, this shelf has a whole lot of really thick books, so it shouldn't take me too long to get through. In the 70s, Marvel Comics had a Conan comic book series, and then there was a second Conan series. I think this one started in 1970, and I think the second one started in 74. If you read Conan and you like Conan books, Dark Horse Comics has a series of essential-sized books that are like done in the thick black and white paper. Savage Sword of Conan. They have like 9 volumes. That is the second series that Marvel was doing, the one that started in 74. It was a little more mature. There was more of a closer to being, I guess, a rated R adult book, maybe. I don't know. I haven't read it. I want to someday. This is the first series, though, and it is only, I think, 20, 30 issues, something like that. And this is the only volume. Marvel put this out, this was like early 2000s, back when the Essentials were kind of just getting started, and then they didn't keep the license. They eventually let the license expire, so now this volume is kind of hard to find. If you see it, you're buying it used, you're not buying a brand new copy, because see, that's the older format of the Essentials. And I think it's very solid. If you like fun, exaggerated pulp, action-adventure, this book is a lot of fun. Unfortunately, you know, that series ran for like 100 issues, I think, and they've only got like 20 to 30 collected here. Not 30, I don't think. I don't remember how many it is. So, if you want the whole series, you're not going to get it unless you go back issue hunting, unfortunately. Then, we got 3 volumes of Essential Doctor Strange. I have said before that Doctor Strange is my favorite Marvel superhero, and this remains to be true, largely because of these stories. I don't know what it was, specifically the stories drawn by Steve Ditko. Some of these, the stories in these 2 books, they're not drawn by Steve Ditko. I don't think that Stan Lee was writing in these 2. I think Roy Thomas and eventually Roger Stern. They're still good, but not as good as the Stan Lee, Steve Ditko stuff. And I know there's actually a volume 4. I haven't gotten it yet. For the last like 4 years, I've just had a huge pile of books waiting to be read, and I keep saying, well, I'll get it eventually. And I know that doesn't reflect well on somebody who says they are a huge Doctor Strange fan, but I am. I love Doctor Strange, and you can tell I've had this first volume for quite a while. It's kind of wearing down. I only read it once, but the cover just looks like it's falling apart. And these other 2 are in better condition. Then I've got, I'll just talk about these kind of en masse, if you will. Essential Marvel Team Up Volume 1. I don't know why I got that, because I like the, when I got it, it was somewhat early 2000s. I wasn't nearly as familiar with superheroes in the comic book world as I am now, so I felt like this series was a really good place where I could, I don't know who the Vision is, so this has an issue featuring the Vision, and I can learn who the Vision is through this series. And it was a very good way to introduce yourself to the Marvel Universe, I think. I don't know if I would necessarily buy Volume 2. It was fun. My big problem is each issue features Spider-Man, and then eventually, you know, you've got these long building storylines where Spider-Man is in every issue, but like in part 1 of a 5-part story, he might be teaming up with the Thing. And then in part 2, he might be teaming up with Doctor Strange. And it just felt really weird how he was jumping around from teaming up with different people in the same story. Like, I really wish if they wanted to do a 5-part story that they would just have him team up with Doctor Strange for 5 parts. That's a little weird, I know, but it was just something that kind of felt strange when I was reading it. I have one volume of Essential Fantastic Four. I actually might have another volume, but I haven't read it yet. And this is a very fun series. I would go so far as to say, from the Silver Age, Marvel's Silver Age, this is one of the best series. I have read some of the other being Spider-Man. I think Fantastic Four and Spider-Man are the two best Marvel comics from the 60s. And this stuff is really awesome. It's not, it's very creative. That's what it is. If you like lighthearted, fun adventure stories, you would love the Fantastic Four from the 60s. And I think they've got like 7 volumes of that series. It goes on up until the late 60s, I believe. I don't think they quite got into the 70s. And I haven't read any of those. I've only read this one. But I like the Fantastic Four. I like them well enough to read certain runs, and this is one that I look forward to reading more. Essential Godzilla. This is one, I had heard great things about this series. It lasted, I think, 25 issues, and this character obviously is not a Marvel Comics character. This is an example of, in the 80s, Marvel had the license to do Godzilla comics. They've also done this with Conan. They did it with Star Wars. They did comics based on Rom the Space Knight. And instead of doing what you would expect, doing comic books featuring the character of Godzilla, they actually incorporated Godzilla into the Marvel Universe. So this book guest stars Devil Dinosaur, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the Avengers, the Fantastic Four. This is firmly a Marvel Comics book, and yet Marvel, they let the license expire. I think because Toho, who the company that owns Godzilla, they wanted more than Marvel was willing to pay, so Marvel was like, okay, we'll just let the license expire. So, flash forward to the 2000s, when they put out an Essential book, I snatched that up so fast there was a smoke trail. I was afraid what was going to happen was, for a limited time, they would be putting out these Essential Godzilla books because Godzilla is not a Marvel character. And I was afraid that they were going to have to pay royalties just to reprint these. So I wanted to get a copy before it ended up being $50 or $60 for one copy. It's actually a lot of fun. Probably not as good as people let on. When I was hearing good things about it, it's probably not that good. People were saying, like, this is the pinnacle of the 1980s, and no, it's not. It's fun, and it's a very interesting series, but I don't know if I would say it's the best thing that I've ever read. If you like Godzilla and you like Marvel Comics, you would probably have already turned this video off and you're ordering it on Amazon. It is a really fun series. I know I'm spinning my wheels here, so we'll just go on to the next one. Essential Killraven. This series, I would say, is probably the best comic book series of the 1970s. It is I don't even know how to describe it. It's really great. The idea is this is set in the future, and the War of the Worlds, the book by H.G. Wells, actually happened, according to this series. And humanity beat the Martians, but did not completely annihilate them. Because in the book, spoiler alert, you're led to believe that the common cold basically completely wiped out the Martians. And according to this, it didn't completely wipe them out, but it did pretty severely take out most of their numbers. Well, then, something like 100 years later, they come back to Earth, they are immune to disease that had wiped them out in the first place, and they pretty much take over the planet. Killraven is a young man. He's like 18 or 19 when the series first starts. He grew up in the slave pens and then became a gladiator for the amusement of the Martians. And when the series begins, he has taken a group of ragtag rebels, I guess, and the series is just these guys fighting the Martians in a post-apocalyptic world. I've seen people describe this as Conan set in the future, and that's a very apt description, because if you look at Killraven, he looks very Conan-y. That costume is bloody awful, but, what can you do? It's also the first few issues. I think one issue was written by Roy Thomas. I think Marv Wolfman wrote a couple of issues. Finally, the main guy they settled on, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name, is Don McGregor. Don McGregor also had a run on the Black Panther, which I've heard is really amazing. But McGregor, instead of handling Killraven like a pulp adventure story, instead of handling Killraven like that, he was doing it more as a morality tale, I guess. Like, you've got some pretty heavy issues of, well, there's Martian babies here. Should they kill the Martian babies? That would be infanticide. Or should they allow the Martian babies to grow up and eventually become oppressors that they will have to kill as an adult? Pretty heavy stuff for the 1970s. And it's the best issues in this book are the ones that don't fully take a side. They're ones that just kind of leave it up to you. And I really enjoyed the series, and sadly, we have not had really a revival of this character, I don't think. There have been a couple of, like, this book contains a little one-shot from the early 2000s, I think, written by McGregor, and it's set, like, 6 months after the last issue here. But for the most part, this book is like the lifespan of Killraven. I think Alan Davis actually did a graphic novel with Killraven that I have not read, but I don't think it's the, air quotes, the same Killraven. It's a slightly different version of that character. I haven't read it yet, so I don't know if it's good or bad, but I really love the character. I really love that series altogether. Essential Silver Surfer. I got this on a whim, mostly, and I'm really glad I did. A lot of the comics in the 60s were very wordy, and most of the time to the point of it didn't need to be so wordy. You could pick up a comic and you could probably remove half of the words from that comic and it would flow just as fine. And I think I say that part of the reason is because you read a comic book now and it doesn't have as much words in it. So you're used to reading a comic that's more action-y. I don't necessarily have to have, just solid action from issue to issue, but I do think that if you've got 5,000 words in an issue, you could probably tone it down a little bit. Show, don't tell, that sort of thing. This series is different in that it's not as wordy. The Silver Surfer is still a very philosophical character, so you're going to get a whole lot of him pontificating, which is my fancy way of saying he whines a lot, but this is still not a very wordy series. For some reason, this was a series where Stan Lee thought that this needed to be a book where people see John Buscema's artwork, and they did. Very, very gorgeous art here, and it's one of those books where they let you just see it instead of saying, the Silver Surfer landed in a farm. They just show you Silver Surfer landing in a farm. And it's, a lot what comic books do nowadays. And I am realizing that I am not going to finish this shelf before the 30-minute mark. I don't want you guys to have like a 50-minute video, so I'm going to probably do this in 2 parts. The next book, also the last essential book on this shelf, is the Rampaging Hulk. I got this because it's supposed to be a standalone type thing. This collects a magazine series from the 80s or 70s. Basically, the idea is, the Hulk, his comic book lasted 6 issues in the 1960s, and then it was canceled. And then he went and guest starred all over the place, guest starred in a whole bunch of comic books, and then finally he took over the series Tales to Astonish, and so eventually that became like the Hulk with like issue 108 or something like that. And basically this series is set in between the final issue of Hulk's first series and the first issue of Avengers. So there's like I don't remember how many years it was in the real world, but a couple of years where Hulk we don't really know what he was doing other than the various guest appearances like in the X-Men or the Fantastic Four. And this is kind of saying, well, he teamed up with an alien artist and he fought aliens for however many months. It's not exactly, this is from the 80s, I think. It doesn't exactly feel like, if you just went and read the first 6 issues of the Hulk from the 60s and then read this series, it does not feel like it's a perfect continuation. The Hulk acts a lot more like the Hulk did in the 80s when this is supposed to be set in the Silver Age. So if that kind of thing bothers you, I would say you might want to give this a skip. But what I did like about it is that it's just a fun standalone Hulk series. It doesn't tie into, there's not 7 volumes of Rampaging Hulk. Whereas, like the Fantastic Four book I like it, but then if, there's 6 more volumes that you want to get if you like it. Whereas this, you can enjoy it, and then that's it. I thought that, but then there's actually a volume 2. I don't know what volume 2 is, because this basically ends with, the way this ends is like, after you read this, then you go read Avengers issue 1. So I don't know if Rampaging Hulk volume 2 was just random stories that star the Hulk, and it had kind of abandoned that idea of being set in between those 2 comics. I'm not really sure, but that's what happened here. And I am probably going to talk about just a few more books here, and then I will end this video and let you guys come back later to see the rest of this shelf. I have here 3 volumes of Walter Simonson's Thor run. I have the other 2. For anyone who's not sure, there are 5 volumes like this of Walter Simonson's Thor and the Visionaries. Also, there's an omnibus that collects all 5 of those volumes as one giant book, and it's like 1,000 pages or more. I did not want to pay, $90 for an omnibus, so I spent several months trying to get all 5 of these Visionaries books. And as it turns out, these books are dense. These books are very, very, they're wordy. I was talking about how wordy comics were in the 60s. In a lot of ways, these books are as wordy as the comics in the 60s. Now, it's not necessarily something like, and then Thor fell in a farm. No, it's not like that. It's a lot of dialogue. It's a lot of characters talking to each other. And I'm okay with that, but it takes a very long time to read. And that's why you only see 3 volumes of this series here. The other 2, I have not yet finished reading. Actually, I'm in the middle of volume 4. And it's just one of those series where, even if you like Thor, and I'm not especially a Thor fan, even if you really love Thor, it just takes a very long time to read. A lot of it is good. I especially like the stuff early on with Surtur, and then after that it kind of loses me a little bit, but it's still good. And if you love Thor, you probably already have this, and if you don't, you should probably go get it. But I find that it's just kind of a little too dense to be a casual read, if you know what I mean. And now, I'm going to talk about these 2 Season 1 books, and then I will end this video here. There we go. Let's see here. Spider-Man Season 1 and Doctor Strange Season 1. I got this Spider-Man book, and I got another one of the Season 1 books. Actually, I got 2 of them. Yeah, I got Spider-Man, X-Men, and Fantastic Four Season 1 discounted at my local Books A Million. They have this one shelf where it's like, all the books on this shelf are $10 or less, and all 3 of those Season 1 books were like $7, and I was like, absolutely. And I got those, and I haven't read the Fantastic Four one yet, but I did read the Spider-Man one, and it was okay. I did a video on it, actually. You can go and see my review of this book. So I won't talk about it anymore. And then this Doctor Strange book, I want to make babies with this book. This is just amazing. If you've read early Doctor Strange, you know that his first appearance, he was an already established superhero. He didn't have an origin. And then I think they waited. They did 2 more issues of him just doing sorcery and stuff. Then I think for 2 issues of Strange Tales, he wasn't in it at all, I think. And then finally, they did, in Strange Tales 115, was his origin story. And it's the story we all know. He was an arrogant surgeon, he was in a car crash, and then he spent his life and his life savings trying to find a way to cure his hands. And he eventually comes to the Ancient One's house and says, like, well, can you cure me? The Ancient One says no. And then it's like, oh, but there's a blizzard here, so you're going to have to stay. And I won't spoil everything about that origin because it's a really good origin story. In my opinion, it's probably the best superhero origin story I've ever seen. And I know you won't agree with me, but that's what I think. And this is the, I guess, in between him becoming a full-on sorcerer crime fighter and his origin story. This book is set immediately after the final page of his origin story, and then it just sort of follows his early exploits, learning to become the sorcerer that we know and love. Where, because even though I will spoil this about the origin story, even though he decides to kind of forego the life of an arrogant sorcerer, it's going to take him a long time to get rid of that life completely. He's still a very arrogant person, and there's still going to be temptations he has to face. I should do a full-on video of this, because I find that I have a lot to say about it. I loved it. This was also, I think, the only one that I paid full price. I just got it at a comic book store last year, maybe. And it was great. I loved it very much. And I feel like if you're not a fan of Doctor Strange, you might not love it as much, but I definitely think it's a solid book, regardless of if Doctor Strange is your favorite character at Marvel or not. And that's all for this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed this collection video, and I don't think there's ever going to be a collection video where I am precise and use few words. This is something where once I get started, I'm just going to keep talking, and so that's why it's going to take me an hour to talk about each level of each shelf. So, having said that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys tomorrow with another video. Have a good day.